If you know what it takes for a customer to be successful and you understand the patterns of their success and you can codify that, you can become a lot more efficient.
Hello, welcome to the Like-Minded podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Puhm, who is a leader in customer success and the founder of DesiredPath. Could you introduce yourself a bit for the listeners?
Yes, my name is Puhm, or Puhm in English. I'm the founder of DesiredPath, a consultancy firm helping customers with customer success. I'm a computer engineer graduate from the University of Toronto by background. Been in software 30 years now, this year, 30th anniversary, and I have worked in many different software companies before founding my own company, in various leadership roles as pretty much the chief customer officer, at companies such as Day Software, which was acquired by Adobe, and Eloqua, which was acquired by Oracle.
But if we would go back to the time where you just had graduated from university, what do you feel like maybe were the first steps you got right in your career that helped you later?
Yeah, I think just basically hand raising, which means that whenever I worked anywhere, if there was something new to do, especially when I started to work at smaller companies, more like startup based, I would always volunteer even if I didn't know what the role was about. So just always offering to be the frontiers person to try something out new and build. And so I actually say that I got my MBA of hard knocks. I learned on the job how to figure out things, build departments, build new organizations, build teams that I didn't receive any education on that or learn about that. I just did it, on the fly as it was necessary for the businesses to grow.
But if you could go back in time and talk with yourself at the time, would you have any advice to give, or would you just tell her to keep going?
I don't have any regrets, but I would definitely, part of me when I was young and going into business, you don't really know what business means or what it's like. So I had this idea that because I studied engineering, I needed to be at an engineering firm and do engineering type of roles, whatever that meant. I wasn't even sure myself. So I didn't even explore things like sales or marketing or any other type of roles. And I knew I wanted to keep, in sort of climbing the ladder, if you so to speak. When I was younger, I thought that was important. So I knew in that direction, but I didn't think of some of the other roles, and I probably would have really been enjoyed sales and been good at it, but I didn't think that was something engineers should go into. So that's probably what I would tell my younger self.
But would you have wanted to, like, if you could go back right now with all the knowledge you have, would you go into sales instead of what you did?
I might actually. Now, what I'm doing now is sales, because as an entrepreneur, you have to generate the business and then run the business and conduct the business. But it's something definitely I would have explored, especially, it was a lot of exciting times going on in the early 2000s, etc., in the software business. So there would have been a lot of opportunities to do some interesting things. But I don't regret it. Where I went is where I've come to today. So I'm pretty happy with where I've landed in my career.
But what was the moment when you decided to say goodbye to your other executive roles and go do your own business?
Yeah, so I wanted to start a business. Like when I was little and my sister wanted to play with Barbie dolls, I played business. I would pretend like I was, running a store or whatever, and have out of paper little money and stuff. So I think it was in me to want to do that. Even in the neighborhood, I started like door to door, my sister and I, and with some little friends, like we draw pictures, etc. Went door to door.
and sold them?
Sold them. My mother didn't know this until I was an adult, and then she was so horrified when she found out. But so I had this little entrepreneur spirit, and I loved it. When I graduated, I wanted to start my own company, but in those days, believe it or not, that was in 95, the internet was just forming. There wasn't, the thought of starting a business, what I learned was that you had to go to like a reference library and do a lot of research and create some huge monolithic business plan. And it just seemed so like a black box to me, an unknown. And I didn't feel like I would know how to go about creating a business on my own. Now it's so much easier. So I didn't do it when I graduated, and I had done in engineering at U of T, there was a 16-month co-op program. So I did between second and third year, had some experience. And so that company hired me. It was IBM and then became Celestica. They hired me right away. So I had a job in hand. So it was easy to go back to what I knew, etc. And so I just started that, but maybe that's also why I hand raised everywhere, because it was sort of like I was running a little business within a business. I was doing something new and something that wasn't tried, and I enjoyed that. So I just naturally gravitated to it. I think when I had all the experience that I did, the other thing is the SaaS, software as a service business, didn't exist when I started. Companies, enterprise software was you sold software to large companies and then you helped them implement it and deploy it. When Salesforce sort of invented this concept of subscription software, and that companies didn't buy the software, they rented the software, you no longer were selling to IT individuals. You could be selling to all sorts of different organizations within a company, like the HR department or the sales department or the finance department. So now all of a sudden you were changing how you were dealing with your customer. You weren't teaching them how to technically install the software and run it like an IT department. You were now teaching people how to leverage software to be better at business people. And so that changed. That's where the birth of this customer success in software started. And so it was new. When I was living in Switzerland, and the CEO asked me to become the VP of customer satisfaction, and said, Kia, if we do this, we'll be one of the first in the world. And I thought he was just being like, an encouraging CEO trying to pump me up. But actually it turned out to be very true. I was one of the first ones to try to figure this out. And so what happened was, that's why then later on I was hired at various companies, and Eloqua recruited me for that early experience that wasn't out there on the market. So we did a lot of different things at Eloqua. I was responsible for a $100 million organization with over 350 people, and we did some pretty unique things. And I started to, based on my 20 years experience at that time, build upon the foundation of building things, and then also within the customer success space. So once Oracle acquired, I went briefly to a small startup as the chief customer officer, but what happened was the business was new, and so a lot of VCs, private equity firms, and CEOs of companies kept calling me up and said, what did you guys do at Eloqua? What did you do at Day Software? Can you share that experience? So I found I was going out for dinners or lunches and people were picking my brain. And so all of a sudden it just was an inflection point of my experience, the time of the market and where this new industry was headed, and me having early experience in the industry, that I just thought, well, I could make a business out of this. And then it just clicked. It made sense, and I could actually see how I could run a business. Before, I didn't know necessarily what I would create or what type of business, but now with the experience that I had and being able, and the context and the networks I had, it was just made sense for me then to start this business. And so that's sort of how I made that leap and left executive. It was sort of an organic path along that way. So a little bit of a longer answer, but trying to give you the context of the kind of the meandering kind of organic path that led me there.
But the beginning, would you say you were confident, or there was some part of you afraid that this might fail?
So, so for some context, I was an elite athlete. I was on the Canadian national team and I was top 10 in the world, etc. So failure for me is not something I'm afraid of, and challenges are not something I'm afraid of. They're just another thing that you go through. So I wasn't afraid of failing or not succeeding. I was focused on doing something that I was excited about and that I knew I had skills in and that people were asking me things about. And just like all that time I hand raised within a company, this was no different. It's just I didn't have this security blanket of like a regular paycheck and a structured work day or somebody that I was reporting to or interacting with. There was all of that was gone. But still building something from scratch and trying something out was all very similar. And my personality to go ahead and just try something and not worrying about failure is innate in me. That's a personality trait. So yeah, I wasn't, I was curious to how it would go, and I was wondering how I might gain customers because I'd never done sales. Well, I had done sales. I mean, when I ran an organization that large, but I hadn't done my own sales of my own services. So, there was, will this work, etc. But the other thing is I also admittedly, I started later in my career and I had the financial backing for myself. I was sort of self-funded and able to, withstand any financial knocks that it would take. So that also took the pressure off that I was able to embark on this journey with what I felt was not a lot of risk.
But what were the early days of your company like compared to what it looks like today? Or did you see it going in the direction that it went?
I did see it in the direction that it's gone in is very familiar, so it's not like there's any surprises there. I think in the early days it was more about the biggest sort of aha moment was that when we just have as humans sort of natural structures that are man-made, that we believe we sort of subliminally rely on these structures to sort of organize our day or give us comfort or feel like we're supported. But actually when you take those structures away, they're just, and what I could say very specifically is, for instance, when you're working at a company, you've got the regular paycheck, you've got a structure of a hierarchy in the organization, you've got 9 to 5 or much more usually at an executive level of hours, etc. But there's all these things, and I'd go to conferences because I had the chief customer officer title, or I was working for a certain company. People would come up to me and talk to me, and obviously just to network because they thought they needed to talk to me. And when I was on my own, now all of a sudden people are like, who's Kia and who's DesiredPath? And then all of a sudden people weren't around talking to you. So that is the type of stuff in the early days that is like, I was so important before and now I'm the same person and I'm different. So the reaction that people have to, whatever is in their thoughts of what people mean to them or don't, or what is, all of these things change when you're an entrepreneur, and you sort of have to really dig deep and just, believe within yourself and your core and just stay true to who you are and what you're trying to do, and be confident from the inside and not let that other stuff rattle you. So that was a different experience than when you've got these loose sort of security blankets that are set up for you. But other than that, it's like every day, you put plans in place, you talk with people, you network, you meet with prospective customers, then you sign customers, and then you deal with customers. That, of course, my offerings have evolved and how I go about it has evolved, but But in general, the foundational aspects are still there.
But now that you've worked with quite many companies, what have you seen are the biggest mistakes maybe companies make when it comes to customer success?
Yeah, well, that's an easy. So for sure, companies are not thinking about their customer from the customer's perspective. They are thinking about how they might sell to the customer or do things to the customer.
Yes.
Meaning, like, okay, they think that for software to work, that the company should run it and use it exactly the way they've envisioned it, and then they think that the company should implement it and deploy it within their business in preconceived notions. And customers don't buy your services or your products because they want to buy your products and your services. They buy it because they want to either feel something or achieve something or leverage your technology to achieve their goals. So understanding the customer, like walking in their shoes and understanding what they're trying to do, gives you bigger insights to how they could leverage the technology in a way that you might not have thought of when you're just thinking about the technical piece of the technology. And that opens your world for offering a competitive, differentiating customer experience that can help you differentiate. So I think companies that try to just sell at their customers and tell customers what they should do without considering the customer are, in ultimately the long run, depending on the industry and the field they probably could have a very successful business. But I think the businesses that shine and that are truly competitive differentiators and that rise above other businesses are the ones that actually truly understand what their customers' needs are and what they want and be able to do that. I mean, Steve Jobs is one of the famous ones to know that people wanted to listen and carry music on a small device and just be able to download and make it easy as opposed to going to get records and tapes and CDs and whatever. So he really thought from it's almost human-centric design thinking. And I actually use that a lot. I talk about customer-centric design thinking when I'm working with clients. And so really thinking about what their needs are is where I think differentiates the really successful from the really weaker companies.
But in real life, how much of a difference have you seen?
So I specialize in the B2B space, the business to business environment. My customers have seen 200% revenue increases. They've seen net retention increase by 20-25% to high 90s. They've seen half of their customer escalations reduced so that they're more efficient, so they become more profitable because they can actually drive success in a more efficient way without like just swinging from the hips at trying to make a customer successful. If you know what it takes for a customer to be successful, and you understand the patterns of their success and you can codify that, you can become a lot more efficient. And actually that's why I called my company DesiredPath. So DesiredPath in architecture or in landscape planning, etc. It's that line in the grass that's worn by people, like when they want to, instead of walking around the sidewalk, they go diagonally because it's shorter, or along a nice stream or shoreline. People want to walk along the water as opposed to further along a road. Those are called desired lines or desired paths. And people usually do that. It's a shorter way, a faster way, a prettier way, a nicer way. And there are companies out there like certain universities, or even in Finland, in the park in the wintertime, where they wait to see where people walk and then they will start to plow the snow, or they will then lay the sidewalk after they have seen where these desired paths are. And so I use the customer journey as the desired path for a company. And then I help companies reverse engineer their operations and how they should align themselves to the successful patterns of their customers. And so that's the desired path that we define what your customer's desired path is, and then we align operationally with that.
So if you had to give advice to somebody who is starting a business today, what would you tell them to focus on maybe in first years of business?
I think, networking and being out there, making yourself known, letting people know that you're in business and what your business is about. So just getting face time and really, pounding the pavement to draw up business. Being clear about what your value proposition is and what you offer, so that you can clearly articulate that and let people know what you're offering. And then just focusing on your plans, like doing every day what you set out to do, and just being confident and patient in that, I think is probably the best advice I could give somebody starting out.
If there was a student watching this right now who looks at this and thinks, Gia is so amazing, I want to be just like her, and what would you tell them? Or what advice would you give to somebody just like starting out or going into their first jobs?
I think follow your passions, right? I think when people are following something that innately drives them, there is that self-driven motivation to work hard, to really put yourself out there, to do things that you might not do when it's something when it's passion that's driving you. So I think, just really following your heart and what you enjoy doing, and make sure that you're doing it because it's something you believe in and that you're really excited in. That's I think the best you can do, because your chances of success are that much higher when you're really behind something and you're really feeling it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for this conversation.